Hey, what is up? This is John Nelson, and you are listening to the Starting Block Podcast. So, if you are looking for a podcast that gives you complete athletic development, cuts through all of the nonsense you see on social media, all the confusion, and gives you the tools to win as the athlete, the parent, the coach, then we are the show for you. So, if you are new to our show, welcome aboard. We have a few different versions, formats for our show. So we're a little bit different than your standard traditional podcast. So the first type of podcast we usually have is going to be the soup of the day or the soup du jour. That's your ode to Dumb and Dumber there. That's basically where Chris and I will talk about a couple different topics. 2-3 topics, anywhere from training to rehab to performance to nutrition. We'll break those down for you. The second type of episode is going to be a little bit more of like a Q&A per se. So meaning we will take questions from you guys, the listeners, and we will answer those questions specifically. The third type of episode that we have is going to be more of a guest interview. So if you've listened to any podcast ever, that's pretty much what all the podcasts are going to be interviews. And so that's where we're going to bring another, badass individual in from our industry, and we're going to talk some shop, hear a little bit about how they win, what their systems are, what their techniques are, what they do with their athletes, their clients in their performance or rehab setting. And, and they're going to share their stories. And then the final episode is our Friday Fire episode. And that is where I will get on for about 10 minutes and I'm just going to speak my mind. So I'm going to rant about who knows what. But if you know me, I'll take you down some good rabbit holes. And man, I speak my mind, and something that I feel like it maybe is a hot button issue that needs to be addressed. And those are going to be your Friday Fire episodes. And so there is a fee for the show, guys. Remember, we do this for free. We don't charge anything. We don't run ads. We don't do anything like that. We do this to get the information out to y'all. We are all about you guys winning and getting this information to the community and bringing our network across the world together to help spread the message of how we can help improve lives and improve the quality of our lives and communities. And ultimately, that's what it's all about, man. And so share the show, guys, please. Remember that. So, as always, I'm here with my co-host, Chris Scarborough. Chris, how you doing today, man?
Great. How you guys doing?
Yep. We're good. And we're going to bring our guest on. So today is a guest interview, and we are pleased to welcome Mr. Shawn Sherman from Square One. Shawn, how are you, man?
I'm doing very well. Appreciate being on the show, guys.
Absolutely.
Heck yeah. Chris, I learned about Square One. Sorry, Shawn, I made that mistake last time. Square's the credit card processing company.
It takes a lot to defend me, so yeah.
Yeah. So I learned. Chris introduced me to Square One. I don't know, man. What, probably 2 years ago or a year or two ago? I don't even remember. And Chris, I know you use it a lot. I know, Shawn, like, you're blowing up. I see you everywhere. I've heard great things. I know Dan Fictor's involved in it. And Chris, like, you and Shawn, how'd y'all connect? How'd that, happen? And let's just kind of open the door here, man. Let's see where it goes.
Well, I was talking with Dan, probably right before I talked with you, John, and that was I've always kind of respected his opinion, and he's like, "Hey, Chris, you got to go check this out." As you know, John, I ruptured my Achilles tendon 9 years ago, and he was giving me a suggestion as to some system that might be able to help recover, get some of the strength back and what have you.
Yeah, because even you went through everything. Like, you went through, normal PT. You went through a lot of the special stuff, like special stem and all that, and you still had trouble with it. I remember.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was one of his suggestions, and I'm very happy to say that we're about to go try that out here in a couple of months in Birmingham. So,
yeah.
Anyway, by the way, I did do the online course, and I was able to use it on some of my clients, but I've had no one use it on me yet. So that's what I'm looking forward to. So, yeah.
Cool. Okay, so Shawn, tell us a little bit about, tell the listeners, and honestly tell me too. I briefly spoke before the show, learned a little bit, but tell everybody how you got started, and kind of let's give us just a bird's eye view of what this system is all about.
Yeah, so it's that's a loaded question. There's a lot of history here, but in a nutshell, I'll give you the briefest version. I got involved in the neuro world, you can call it, about 20 years ago when I learned muscle activation techniques out in Denver. So that was back in 2002. Ended up helping a lot of people with that system. Ended up working with the Chicago Cubs for, I believe it was 6 years. So that was kind of my intro into the neuro world. And I ended up having this one client that just wasn't getting great success with the MAT stuff. So what I did is, spare you all the details, but I ended up doing the polar opposite of everything I'd ever learned. So instead of viewing restrictions in range of motion,
I know the feeling. I've been there and done that. Yeah.
right? So I think a lot of people who find the neuro stuff, that's it, because they're like frustrated.
Yeah.
There's got to be more. There's got to be more.
Yep.
So what I did is I wasn't trying to come up with anything. I wasn't trying to develop my own system or anything like that. I was just desperately trying to help this one guy who was a good dude, and I wasn't helping him. And so instead of looking at protective muscle guarding as being the only source behind restriction range of motion, I'm like, I'm not going to make any judgments. I'm going to do the opposite of what everybody taught me to do. So if there was restriction in the hip flexion as an example, instead of thinking, oh look, it's active insufficiency of the agonist, instead of looking at the psoas and the rectus femoris and the TFL and all the hip flexors, I'm like, well, maybe it's the opposite. So what I did with this guy is I put him on his, this client named Alan. If you put him on his belly, I always say he was like a turtle on his back. Like he couldn't lift his head off the ground, he couldn't lift his arms off the ground. He was pretty much stuck in a prone position. So what I did is instead of trying to open up into that posterior chain and open him up into extension, because I'd already tried doing that with him for a number of sessions, I decided to feed the opposite. So we kind of fed the anterior chain, and we just did a bunch of isometrics up and down the anterior chain. Next day he calls me, all his pain's gone. He tells me he's 2 or 3 inches taller, and he took 11 or 12 strokes up the best round of golf he's ever shot. And I'm like, bullcrap. Like, no way. So I didn't believe him when he first told me all this. So that was kind of the happy accident that started this thing. So then what I really wanted to learn was, that kind of took me back. I'm like, holy crap, man. Like that, what do I do with this information? Because I have no idea what just happened, but that was like the best success I've ever seen. So what I did is I kind of circled the wagons, and I was just really honest with myself. Like, what do I really know, and what skills do I actually have? So I got a 4-year degree in exercise and sports science, but that doesn't mean anything in the real world with a person that has a heartbeat, man. So if you don't have skills and don't have the ability to solve a problem, you're kind of screwed in the private sector. So what I realized is the only skill I had in this industry was this neural response testing that I learned from MAT. So what I did is I took that and I used it to ask the body yes/no based questions. So what I really want to know is when the foot hits the ground, what happens? Because at Penn State, they didn't teach that to me. In MAT, they didn't teach that to me. I'm Googling it. I'm like, I just want to know, like, at a real basic level, when the foot hits the ground, what happens at the knee? What happens at the low back? What happens in the neck? And I couldn't find those answers. So I basically started viewing every one of my customers as a lab rat. And I would literally just imitate and mimic ground reaction forces at every joint in the body in 3 planes of movement in both directions. And I'm like, I'm not going to go in with any judgment. I'm just going to be like a blank piece of paper, and I'm just here to observe. And I start documenting all this stuff, and lo and behold, I basically uncovered these neuromechanical maps that undergird locomotion and their squat patterns. So those are our 2 most rudimentary mature patterns. So I tried to make that short for you guys, and that's my version of short, I guess. So sorry.
No, okay. No. So I guess what's kind of the underlying theme behind Square One? So yeah, we know, at least the 3 of us know, okay, we're looking for a perception threat or your neurodysregulation, but like, what is the underall theme of it? Is it all back to ground reaction forces? So there's something going on, like in the joint. What is it?
It started that way, and that would be the original version of Square One, which is our proprioceptive version, but we also have a vestibular and a visual piece. So I really think it comes down to is when those 3 senses, and those are the 3 senses that our brain uses to create posture. So I'm
going to stop you right there for just a second, just for anybody who's not who doesn't know what those are. You need, especially for our athletes, if you're listening to this, go Google. Okay, you have unlimited information, Google. But you basically have the proprioceptive, you got the visual, you've got the vestibular. Vestibular is going to be that inner ear, that balance component. Visual, obviously your visual. Proprioceptive is going to be a little bit more feel, things like that, okay? And so these systems are always kind of working back and forth, right?
Correct,
so,
exactly. And so when they integrate, high quality inputs coming from those three systems, when they integrate well and they're synced up well, there's going to be good expressions. So then it really comes down to is, garbage in equals garbage out. So I don't know what the opposite of that is, but I think that's what we have with Square One, is that we are finding where there's like an interruption in these input signals that are, basically the sensory input from our eyes and from our receptors in our joints and from our vestibular system, those semicircular canals inside of our head. And so when there's a lack of input coming from one of those areas, it disrupts homeostasis. And now you have these different systems are borrowing and lending resources back and forth. There's inefficiency, and movement quality is going to suffer. So that's going to be less athleticism, more pain, and everything in between.
Okay, so you're definitely looking at it from those three systems and then how that impacts the body. So I know, Chris, when you came up here and you were showing me a little bit of it, how much did you do, Chris? I think you said, but I forgot. What all have you done?
All I did was the online course. That's all I've done so far.
Okay.
And
okay.
That's the original. That's the proprioceptive version. That's all we had until about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
That last year and a half is when we kind of came up with this vestibular and vision piece as well.
Okay. So, all right. So in summary here, I guess in the very, very broad view, you're evaluating how those three systems are interacting, how they're communicating, and their impact ultimately on, muscles function. Now, are you looking at it more from a muscular, like the firing capacity of it, the strength of it? Like what are you looking at, or any of the above?
I'd say more any of the above. So we don't even have like, hey, here's our set parameters we're looking at. So when I was developing it, in order to keep myself honest and like hold my feet to the flame, I'm not even going to check any outcomes, and because I'm seeing these really cool things, but in order to make sure that I wasn't convincing myself that I came up with something really cool, I literally withheld doing any kind of metric evaluation type stuff because I was just waiting to hear the reports from our clients, and it was like overwhelmingly like, I don't even know what you're doing to me, dude, but I feel amazing. I feel the ground better. I'm setting PRs in a gym. So what we can really, it changes everything from, we've been looking a lot at lately is not only balance, but also visual acuity, like an eye chart you would use at an optometrist appointment. We're also looking at peripheral vision. We've seen reaction times change. We've seen D1 and pro hitters like baseball put on 12, 13 miles an hour on their exit velos. We've had pro athletes jump 4 inches higher. We've had people who've had strokes that are in walkers in 2 sessions. They don't use a walker anymore. So really from pro athlete to, someone in kind of in a whole neurologically, we've seen this stuff help everybody. So I would say, yeah, man, it has the potential to change almost any kind of like physical expression that you can bring up.
So are you looking at it more from like I don't want to say compensation standpoint, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So obviously, so like we're looking at visual, so it's going to be a down regulation of something, so let's just hypothetically say like we're looking at the visual side of it, and just my right eye is weak, so to speak. Like, are you looking at it from that standpoint, or are you going deeper and saying, okay, maybe my nervous system's compensating that visual field because of a vestibular problem or whatever? Like, you looking at it from that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter, in that we're not looking at, this is weak and it's like a graded, like it's pretty good or okay. We're looking purely at the binary design of the human body, because if you really boil human movement, and obviously human movement is super complicated, but if you really boil it down, everything's binary about movement. Like you can either succumb to gravity, we call that pronation, or you can overcome gravity. So we look at that through the lens of proprioception, visual, and vestibular, and how we would do that. You brought up the example of vision. We're looking at when this person literally looks up, what impact does that have on the nervous system versus when they look down? So we're looking at up versus down and a comparison between the two, and then we're looking at eyes right versus eyes left, and we're looking at a comparison. And you said earlier too about fight or flight, threat versus safe. We're looking at which of those, eyes right, left, up, down, which ones are helping the person get organized because those inputs are safe, and which is causing further disorganization.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I know Dan's talked about that, a good bit too. I think, I don't know, I think Dan and I had a conversation about it, or did a podcast. I don't remember, or a webinar. But yeah, like looking up and down and the activation of the flexors and extensors. How much are you putting on almost like a like a lifestyle choice and how much that impacts them. So, let's say like you could use the example of just our society and people constantly looking down, and if that's inhibiting or overactivating an area, or like a baseball player, like a right-handed hitter constantly looking out, that left side. Like, how much does overuse, so to speak, play a role in some of this activation or dysfunction?
I would say I'm going to just guess that it has a huge role in it, but I'm not even looking to try to assess that. So I guess it's like a lot of people in our industry are trying to say, oh, you should do this and change this behavior, and I'm like, that's all fine. That's not my area. My area is right now there's disorganization, and if we can restore that right now, I'm just trusting that the outcomes are going to be better. We're going to raise their neural resiliency so that everything they do, they can handle. So I want to get it where I don't care if you're looking down at your phone 20 hours a day. If that's what you need to do or that's what you're choosing to do, my job is to prepare your nervous system to be able to tolerate that. So I'm trying to make it where every one of my clients' nervous system doesn't freak out because they did too much of this or that. So I don't look at things as being good or bad. I look at everything as a potential challenge, and my job is just to raise that integrity of the nervous system so they can do whatever they need to do. Because the demands of someone sitting behind a desk is totally different than an NFL quarterback. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because it still comes down to this person is either organized or disorganized, up, down, right, left. So all I'm going to try to do is restore them and just make it where they can just handle whatever they need to be able to handle. So, yeah, so I'm sure it has a big role, like your lifestyle choices. But in my mind, that's already been done. Like we could coach them on how they should make better choices, but I kind of don't care. My job is to put Humpty Dumpty back together again and put better and better glue and get them more resilient, and then we keep raising his ability to tolerate more and more stress.
All right, I've got a follow-up question on that. So let's just say that I'm kind of thinking, and I realize these are hypothetical examples, but I want to kind of give a hypothetical.
Sure.
So let's just say that you have an athlete and they every time they look to the left, they just move their eyes to the left. Mm-hmm. They lose their balance or what have you. I mean, give us a real world example. Okay, we got a football player. How would that negatively impact them, and then how would fixing that potentially help them? If that makes sense.
Sure, it does make sense. Yeah, I think it's how I think that would negatively impact them in life or on the field is obviously if looking left is like kind of that weak spot or whatever, they will have to orient their body in order to avoid eyes going left. So they might have to turn their head left when it needs to go right. So they're gonna compensate is what's gonna happen. And compensation rids us or erodes our movement efficiency, and that rids us of or erodes our athleticism. So how I would deal with that is I would create different contexts of eyes left. So I want to have them land on their back, give them the safest environment, have them look left. And if that's triggering them, I don't need to have them stand on one foot and throwing different objects at them. I don't need to take them to crazy town just yet. So I want to get it where we can restore that where they're safe laying down, safe sitting, safe standing, safe one foot in front of the other, switch feet, now make it more dynamic, have them walk. So I would start at the most basic, orientations or environments with that eyes left piece, knowing that that's their issue, and I'm going to try to build resilience in these different environments, different contexts.
What type of parameters are you using to make sure that you're not overstimulating them or that their nervous system doesn't go insane?
I would say nothing. I don't have any kind of way to assess that. I would say that hasn't happened yet. I've done thousands of sessions, and I think the reason behind that is I feel like we got a laser pointer. I think we have a real pinpoint thing here in that if I have assessed somebody and their eyes go left and there's a fail, like the response test fails, and eyes right are nice and organized, I leave that eyes left piece alone. So I'm going to
interrupt you there. What is your response test going to be? Or give or take.
Sure. The correct term would be proprioneural response muscle testing. So it's the same style testing that came out of applied kinesiology, clinical kinesiology, and we use it probably similarly to the kinesiologist.
So you are using muscle testing still. Okay.
Oh yeah.
That's where I got confused because my only background at Square One was Chris showed me a while back. With the the proprioceptive side of it. And like I said, we talked before the show, like we do a ton of muscle testing here. It's a big part of what we do. So when I got confused, I guess in the beginning. Okay. So you still use it. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And we're not looking at like which muscle fails. I don't care what muscle test we use. So to me, a psoas is the same as an upper trap is the same as a popliteus test. I'm merely using it as a way to detect change. That's it. So it's not like, oh, this popliteus is failing, so that means you can't turn in. That's going to affect the hip internal rotators. I know all that stuff is real, but that's not our view. So we're really looking for a failed test out of the gate, and then I want to find out what helps them become more organized. So if I have them, all right, I find like an upper trap test, for example, say it fails, I'll have them, okay, keep the head still. I want you to look left with your eyes. And if that test still fails, I'm like, okay, no big deal. Have your eyes go to the right, and it gets strong. That tells us, okay, looking right helps this person to become more organized. So then what I would do is I would look at all, if I'm looking at proprioception, I'm looking at all the other 100 plus joint actions that are related to eyes to the right. So what we're doing is imitating or mimicking ground reaction forces at the joint action level in that restorative pattern. So because of that, I don't think we're stressing a person's body out at all. It literally has this alleviating response. Like it's crazy. When I first started developing this, as I was just going through the assessment, people were like, I'm already feeling better. I'm like, well, that's impossible because we really haven't intervened yet. But I think what it was is just by kind of encouraging towards that organizing phase, it was already taking stress off that nervous system. So we don't do anything to monitor like what's too much. I suppose if I had someone had like a recent head trauma issue and they start getting nauseous, I'm not gonna put my foot in the accelerator either. But we really haven't had. I mean, I'm gonna say virtually no people like getting like kind of like a hyperexcited nervous system where they're vomiting or passing out or any of that. That just hasn't happened with Square One.
Okay.
I hope that
Chris?
answers your question.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I this is one thing that I did take away, and that is, you're talking about, you're saying, moving eyes right might turn things on. Well, that you could take any joint in the gait cycle that would also go along with right vision. Anything it would reorganize.
And
yes, you get the same response.
Yep. So it should have the exactly. So yeah, great. So Chris, if we go eyes right, well, if we just go down a level to the neck, that's the neck turning to the left. So if I'm looking at you guys and I turn my head to the left, well, the net effect, in order to keep looking at the camera, my eyes are now having to turn right. So eyes right is head left, neck left is T-spine right, lumbar left, pelvis right, right leg internal rotation, right shin internal rotation, the heel everting, the arch collapsing, the toes flexing. So those are all equal parts and parcel part of that, what we call right step. And the same for
so that's
left. So all of these pieces,
which is really amazing. And once I figured that part out, that was I was like, oh, okay, now I got it. Now I understand the concept, even if I'm very slow in the practice. So it's
and it's weird. It's like it's weird to me every time I use it on something. Like, this is like, am I imagining all this stuff? Because you see these very reliable responses. Like once you start mapping things out, it's like, I always tell my students, like, the system teaches you, because you should be finding if someone's lacking balance. You have that person who's not the perfect individual, which we haven't met him or her yet, but we're really expecting there to be a preference for going right versus left, up versus down. So if you feed the pattern or imitate ground reaction forces that are any joint action that's consistent with that disorganizing phase, it really is negative. But if you go after that organizing phase, it's all good stuff. But you got to find that one outlier. Just find out why is the body choosing to compensate and disorganize by going left. The problem has to be with going right. So we just got to find that joint action that is presently perceiving ground forces as a threat, and then neutralize that threat through an isometric contraction.
Well, all right. So let's take that. I like to say examples, because we deal in the world where people really do have knee injuries, or they really do have ankle injuries, or they really do have wrist injuries, or whatever. Let's think of a case example. Let's just say an ACL. Okay, somebody tore an ACL. Very common, pretty significant injury. Usually requires surgery. How would Square One help the person who's already torn their ACL? How might it prevent someone who's had, say, a history of maybe they've already had 2 ACL surgeries and we know they're at risk for doing it again? I mean, like I said, I'm trying to stick with as best of a real world example that I can think of.
Sure. All right, so 2 questions. One's, how would we help a person who already has an ACL, damaged ACL? The other one is, how would we help somebody prevent it, from having a second or third whatever. Okay, so I look at every movement problem there's structure and function involved. But the problem is most people in the industry, it's all structural. It's everything structure. And I know you guys and, probably a lot of your audience, it's like more neuro-based. So I'm preaching the choir here. So my thought on that is, anytime there's an issue, whether it's, an ache, a pain, it's an injury, a tissue damage, obviously there's going to be some structural damage, but there's an associated functional issue. So if we can upgrade and, raise the level of the nervous system, well, that's going to do a really good thing to the body, and that it's going to feel a little safer in that knee, So what we want to do is create different environments to challenge that knee. And at first, if it's a fresh injury, it might literally be dude's laying on his back and just living in his body. And then it might be like, okay, now try to straighten your knee a little bit. And then we check him. Bend your knee a little bit. Let's check him. Internally rotate, externally rotate. So we just start building up from the bottom and find out what can this guy tolerate. So when we find something that doesn't tolerate, then we intervene with square one, restore function, and then we challenge them with that same activity. So all we're doing is okay, we're down here at the first floor, and I'm trying to get in the second floor, and the third floor, fourth floor. So I'm just upgrading or increasing the challenge that they can handle. And when you're checking that nervous system all the time, it'll tell you exactly what they can and can't handle, so you're never overdoing it. So I would think we would just want to raise the neural integrity, provide that, more, I don't know, like a healing environment internally, so they can expedite the healing process to accompany whatever they want to do. Whether it's surgery or they want to do traditional physical therapy, fine. But we want to make sure that that nervous system piece is there. And I think what we're really dealing with, is perception. So if we can get their brain, their subconscious, to not perceive the ground as a threat when you stand up, that's kind of good, because you're going to stand up, you're going to walk, because every time you stand up and it's perceived as a threat, well, that's a problem. So you're really fueling compensation. So be like, well, it doesn't hurt when I stand up. Well, if you're waiting for pain to inform your decision making, you're way behind the eight ball. I mean,
you're too late at that point. Yeah.
Totally. And then as far as prevention, it's the same thing. It's what I do if I have, whether it's athletes or just grandma on the street with back pain, all I'm trying to do is, initially, I'm trying to get it where they don't perceive, subconsciously, any of their activities of daily living as a threat. So I'm getting in and out of chairs, up and down steps, reaching into cupboards, looking under the couch, whatever. So I'm just doing real basic patterns on everybody, pro athlete to grandma. And then usually late in the first session, somewhere in the second session, then I start customizing. Okay, what's this person really need to be able to do? So if I have like a female soccer player in high school, because that's what everybody's worried about, these ACLs, I'm going to put her in situations that are going to occur on the pitch. So it might start off statically, standing on one foot, and actually make her knee dive in. And can she handle that? Have it dive out, have her go into a further knee flexion, have her go into extension, add head position movements to it. So we want to recreate as many real world scenarios as possible and find out which ones are problematic for her nervous system, and then neutralize that as a threat. So we start easy, and then we just kind of keep ramping up through. So it's the same process whether someone already has an ACL tear or they're trying to prevent it. To me, all I'm trying to do is find out what is kind of breaking their software, put them back together, increase that resilience, and do it again and do it again. So we're not trying to fix it through repetition. We're fixing it through drawing out these layers of compensation, and then give the specific input that it needs to not need to compensate as much, and then we draw another one out with challenge. So it's challenge, reset, challenge, reset,
right.
Challenge, reset.
Okay. Yeah. Now I got a whole list of questions here, but some of them may not be good for this episode, because they're pretty in depth. But I guess one of the questions I know, at least, that I inevitably get asked all the time is, okay, why is something shut down? Why is this perception a threat here? Why? And I'd just like to hear your take on that. So you talk about the softball player, okay, standing on one leg should be a basic human movement, okay, it should be, but ultimately, why do you feel, and what do you see? Why does the body shut down like that?
I'd just say general. The answer is stress, and stress. Most people hear that and they're thinking mental or emotional.
Yeah.
To me, stress can be defined as any stimulation that the nervous system perceives as a threat. So any stimulation that takes a system out of balance, that's a stress. So I can't possibly interview somebody and find out, hey, were you 13 days old or 18 days old when you fell to your crib? You know what I mean? All these different life events have already happened. So my thing is, I don't even bother trying to figure all that stuff out. So it's funny, as I always tell people, I'm meeting you today, and we're going to clear out the whole proverbial layer of an onion. We're going to clear out that most superficial or most recent layer. We're going to clear it out, and we'll go a little deeper and deeper and deeper. So maybe in 3 or 4 or 5 sessions, I could probably recreate your history. But that person telling me, oh, I did this or I did that, I kind of don't care. All I want to know is if we're doing anything that actually irritates, because I tell all my clients, I don't have x-ray or MRI eyeballs, so let's be conservative if there's aches and pains. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to challenge them, break them. I don't even bother trying to figure out, the why in their history. I'm looking for the why right now. Why does your brain feel it needs to compensate? That's the why that I care about. So I try to be really more in the moment, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I see people, especially I have to see them, a handful of times. They're usually asking me, okay, well, why does this keep shutting down? So just thought your input on that was important. What role or any, and actually let me preface in saying, and we'll get back to some real world examples because I do think that's very beneficial. But me kind of being the neuro geek that I am, my brain naturally goes this way. So for anybody listening, I'm going to ask them about primitive reflexes. And for those who don't know what primitive reflexes are, primitive reflexes are reflexes that, we're basically innately given, innately born with, and they're designed to protect us, throughout the, usually the first 2 years of life-ish, give or take. These reflexes, as they fully ingrain, they lead way to your deep tendon reflexes and more advanced reflexes. They kind of work as like a symphony. But sometimes the body will, they don't develop. And so you may have a reflex that is just, maybe it was, I don't know, the spinal gland reflex didn't develop at an early age, and your nervous system gets stuck and compensates somehow. So, they eventually have to go away. How much of a role or do primitive reflexes play in square one?
Square one.
Damn, dude, I did it again.
It's all right. So this square one used to be called reset. My clients still call it reset. Like, dude, that was like 7 years ago we changed the name. You're one of about 100 people who misname and just know Marissa. It's okay. As far as primitive reflexes, it's I would say that it doesn't directly play into anything that I'm doing, and I recognize that it's a real thing. But what's really cool with square one is I look at it, it's a framework, and I look at primitive reflexes or doing a bench press or harboring certain thoughts. Those are all inputs into the system. So we will sometimes check those things. So I'll sometimes get people, in crawling patterns and things like that if I want to take it there. But you don't have to. And without taking it into the neurodevelopment patterns, it wasn't stopping us for the first decade getting great results. So therefore I would say, if I say it's not important, I'm going to upset and piss off half your audience or something. So it's not what I mean that it's not important.
No, I piss them off all the time, so you're fine.
So yeah. So when I say it's not important, I would say my absolute ignorance of the primitive reflexes, and I even now this is ignorance. I'm a little bit above ignorance at this point, so I don't really know those intimately. So just full disclosure. So my ignorance of those primitive reflexes hasn't stopped me from helping 95% of our clients get out of pain, jump higher, or whatever they're looking for.
Yeah,
I think it's important, but I think by the time you're 6, 7, 8 years old, you're a mature mover now. So at that point, it really comes down to is what are the base patterns for a mature mover? And to me, it's get upright and then locomotion. So those primitive reflexes were there to as we were developing and getting strength in order to get us from on our backs to on our belly, roll over and then up into our knees and then to a tall kneel and then into okay, now we're standing. But at that point, it's what's done is done. So I mean, I suppose if you had someone who had real some neurological deficits, like some crazy disease, that might present a problem that we'd have to delve into it. But I find that I don't really have to get into that in order to help a person. And everyone I'm working with, I don't know.
Cool.
My one son, I worked with him when he was 3. He was old enough I could actually do muscle testing on him. My other kids, they were 7, 8, 9 before they could actually follow the directions and hold their leg there. So most of my clients, I mean, I rarely have someone in that 7 to 12 age group. But I'd say about 7 or 8 is kind of the low end of who we tend to work with.
Okay, cool. That you've hit on crawling a few times, and so I'm gonna tell you to do me a solid and tell me why you like crawling, because I know my athletes hate it.
Yeah,
and what?
I just do it as a trigger. My thing is if say I'm doing something hey, if we notice that when their head's back and their eyes are going right, and it's just a problem for them. So we've ascertained that, whatever we've figured that out. So I'm all right, I'll have them do that while they're standing, and it's it just keeps triggering. I'm all right, let's regress this a little bit. Let's have them sit. and it's still crushing them, right? So then it's like, all right, let's get them on their belly. So then all I'm trying to do is get them back to the ground like you were as a baby, and I'm trying to find like, okay, where can we, all right, get a solid base. So sometimes I'll regress things to a crawl or sit or whatever down on the ground, and then I kind of regress it, get them solid, then I work my way back up. So I don't have an affinity. There's very few patterns that I'm like, oh, we have to do this, other than get up and down. I think squatting. So really, you know, want a simple basic workout, jump as high as you can and run as fast as you can. That would be the catch-all training program to me, because that's what mature movers, that's what we need. That would be the extreme end of athleticism for us mature movers. So yeah, so I don't love or hate crawling. I hate doing it myself, but I don't look at exercise as a way to correct patterns. I just look at exercise and these different patterns as a way to provoke the nervous system. So my job isn't to, you know, hey, let's repetitively do this exercise over and over again. My job is to find out which patterns suck for them or what they're perceiving as a threat, neutralize it. So I'm just looking for everything I can so that anything that they do when I turn my back on them, I've already prepared their body for. So, sorry, man.
No, it's all good.
Real simple.
Oh, man, I love it. It's awesome. Chris, you got another question? It looks like you had a question, man.
No, I mean, you're kind of going in the direction I was interested in, and that is, you know, like I said, you were mentioning you were going to give some other, you know, more real world examples. But you know, John, I want you to finish with yours first, since yours is more on the theoretical.
Yeah.
And you're the.
Oh, well, I mean, shoot, I keep going. I got a whole sheet of things I want to ask you, but, you know, I think I may save some of that for a follow-up podcast, or maybe even off air. We can dig into that, some of the really, really geeky stuff. But I guess, you know, I want to, you mentioned the 3 planes of motion. You know, I would argue with you on that one personally. I'm not a firm believer in the 3 planes of motion. That goes against conventional theory for the most part, but I feel like the body moves in a different manner. So, like, I don't believe there's a fully linear pattern or sagittal or anything like that. I mean, like, there is this full, like, gyro flow of everything moving all at once, kind of, you know, the David Weck type deal. You know,
we're probably not at odds, actually. So to me, it's just those cardinal planes is like a reference point, just names.
I got you.
Yeah. So as far as like how a person moves, yeah, it's not like we move like robots here. We go front sagittal and then we do
right.
Yeah,
because so many things are based that way. I mean, so many training or rehab. It's like that is not how the body works. Like the couple motion theory of the spine. Like, I mean, my God, some people find that it's just a super complex concept. It's like, no. Couple motion is very basic, and like that should be known by anyone remotely in our field. I mean, there's 2 movements with everything. So, anyways, that was kind of made me think about something. But you know, the other side is, I guess, and going into the practical side, you know, as we get closer to wrapping this up, is I guess the two questions in one. One is, do you see certain like common patterns? So, like visual dysfunction kind of tends to lead to A, or vestibular kind of leads to this, or proprioceptive leads to this, but then also like applying that to real life examples and how we can improve our clients and athletes' outcomes with them.
Yeah, I guess I see the same patterns all the time because I'm only looking at 4 phases of movement. I'm looking at, you know, sit, all the joints collapsing with gravity, versus up, or, you know, stand. And then I'm looking at going right versus going left. So I'm only looking at those 4. And to me, those are like Lego pieces. It's almost like, you know, maybe right's a 2-pronger and left is a 4-pronger, and that's a 6 if you go up, and going down is like an 8-pronger. And if you had an unlimited reservoir of 2s and 4s and 6 and 8, I don't know if prong is the right word for Lego pieces, but I think you know what I'm talking about. But if you had enough of those pieces,
they feel like spikes when you step on them, so I don't know.
Yeah, some sensory input to the bottom of the foot.
Yeah.
But I think if you have enough of those, to me, that is the language. So to me, it's like you can build patterns out of it. Like, you know, maybe if I'm doing a jump shot, that might be like, you know, I'm a right-hander. That might be like, you know, 47 units of going left and 13 units of going right. It's a weird combination of up and down and right and left. So I think I look at, you know, visibly, I'm watching movement different than most other people in our industry. I'm not actually visibly inspecting a person and watch how they walk. And if I do, if it's really egregious, I'll say, hey, hold on. And then I get my iPhone and I film how ugly it is. Because I'm like, once we get the restoration to these basic pieces, we come back and then we film it again. So I don't use that to solve the problem ever. I only use it to document the change. So I think it's a fool's game for most of us, is to like, oh, look, that knee dives in, and then you start building a whole story around that. That is such a fool's game. because I could build you a million different stories that would describe why the knee dives in. And good luck picking the accurate one for this person. So I think a lot of times in our industry, people confuse logical with accuracy, and I think it's bullcrap. There's millions of logical stories, and so yeah. So I kind of don't. I guess I don't play that game. So I'm more looking at, all I care about is I want there to be no preference for the nervous system between up versus down, so the brain can freely choose to go either direction, and I want there to be no preference right versus left, so again it can freely choose. And then I just use movement as a way to kind of poke the bear a little bit, try to challenge them and find out what actually sets them off. And yeah, so I don't know if that answered your question or not, but I think I look at movement differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and I do believe, kind of what you said. There's you used a perfect example of something that gets attacked all the time, and that is, that that knee tracking inward, or the internal rotation of the hip when someone stands. I can't begin to tell you how many times that's been blamed on various problems in the knee, and sometimes it might be, but there's a lot of times where it doesn't.
Right. 100%.
Yeah, sure.
To me, I say it's always a reference point. Like, I went to the chiropractor. Guess what he told me? I'm like, you have a functional.
Let me guess, one leg shorter than the other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Functional every time. I'm like, yeah, no kidding. You're welcome to the party. We all do. Like, there's none of us that are perfect. So,
that has nothing to do with sympathetic, parasympathetic balance and loss of, parasympathetic inhibitory tone.
Right.
Nothing. No, not at all.
Your one leg's literally longer. Like, come on.
Yeah, always.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm not even arguing. Like, that's like saying, like, hey, you know what? You know what's outside? Air. No kidding. Wow. Thanks for the information. That tells you nothing of value, right? So yeah. So I get it, like fired up with this stuff, because I hear the same. It's like the same people that are repeating all these myths over and over and over again. Like, okay, that's great. So you're spending a half hour, like one leg's longer. You're doing all these assessments. Who freaking cares? What are you doing to help the person? So it's almost like it looks sciencey, because it looks like, oh, I got my clipboard out. Here's a number for you. But at the end of the day, all that person cares about, can you help me? And like telling them that their right leg's longer, how's that helping anybody? How does that actually help the practitioner solve the problem? Like, it's like, you ever, like, sometimes when my back will get jacked up, my pelvis will be hiked up. And I remember early on, I'd go see a chiro, and I generally like chiropractic. So I don't care. There's great ones and there's horrible ones, like any other profession. But it's like, I remember I went to a guy one time, I'm like leaned over to the right. Like, it's like I'm just jammed up there. He's like, you should try going the other way. I'm like, that's why I came to give you money. You think I didn't think about that before I scheduled with you? Like, I've been stretching this and trying to do hiking the other side for like 10 days, dude. That's not working. So, duh. Like, how about can you go like a layer deeper? And they just couldn't. So
yeah. I've had that once in 16 years. I've actually had it one where we have some. We have some great healthcare providers we work with. They're open-minded. They believe it. They love us. We love them. They're awesome. I had a girl who had a reoccurring hamstring issue. I'm like, look, I cannot figure out this. We've done everything. She's seen people before me, whatever. So I sent her to our healthcare provider. She's like, I think one leg's shorter. I'm like, no. She did the X-ray, and it's like, it legitimately is. And I'm like, oh, shoot, okay. Yeah. It's like, all right, so there we go. Okay, yeah, one time.
And
so
then
it was
those structural, those. I mean, none of us have perfect symmetrical, structure right versus left. So it really comes down to, can your nervous system handle different environments you put your skeleton in as you're going right, left, up, down. So the whole deal is like, what can your nervous system handle? Whether you got one collarbone higher than the other, like, okay, it is what it is. But if we can get your nervous system handling things right, whatever function we can restore, it's going to bring some level of balance. But that's not even the goal. The goal is, what can your nervous system handle before it breaks? And that if we can get the nervous system to handle more and more, you're going to have great expressions. You're going to have whatever you're going for. Oh, I can touch my toes now, or my knee doesn't hurt as much, or it's gone. Or, wow, when I play hoops, I can play an extra game. I'm not fatigued, or I can jump higher. Like, that stuff, that's all the expression. That's all that downstream stuff is going to get taken care of if you can address the headwater issues.
Yeah. So, clearly, Square can be integrated, at all levels. Is this, for, a trainer, strength coach, PT? You train all of them?
Yeah, and I think I'd say the biggest limitation to Square One is that it is a one-on-one situation. So that would be, we have some different products we put out there, like kind of Square One inspired, warm-up type ideas. But really, the limitation is it's kind of a one-on-one. Or if you had a small group of maybe 3 or 4 athletes, you could set up like stations, like maybe they're doing a deadlift and a sled pull and whatever your program is, and then on the brakes, you can park yourself there and assess an athlete and clear a layer or two in between rounds. But for the most part, it's very much a one-on-one situation.
Okay.
That would be
So,
the biggest cut against it, actually.
Okay. So now how would somebody get started with you? Somebody listening to this, how do they get started? What do they need to do?
There's different options. Depends on how much, how bought in they are. It's like, hey, I've heard this. I've seen some guys do it. I really want to do this, and I'm ready to go. Then the recommendation would be to do our level 1 course first, our workshop. And then within that, you also get like 3 online workshops or courses. So you get our Signal 6, you get a Science of Square 1, which is basically neurology condensed into about an hour, and then you also get the self reset. So that would be the first recommendation. And then if you're feeling brave, usually when we do these workshops, we do 1 on a Saturday and level 2 on a Sunday. If you're brave, you could do 1 and 2 back to back. And that will give you the whole framework, all the procedural steps, the muscle testing. In level 1, we go over the vestibular intervention or reset. And level 2, we go over all the joint action maps and then the isometric intervention there. If someone's like, hey, this sounds kind of cool, but it's the first time I heard about it, I don't want to invest a whole lot of money. I guess my recommendation would probably be, well, first of all, to make it free is just follow us on Instagram, and there's lots of stuff there, and you'll learn as you go. And I'm pretty responsive to people's questions. But if they're like, I want to buy a product, I think I would probably start people off with most people. I'd probably say Sig 6, because there's no muscle testing, there's no assessment. It's just some Square 1 inspired ideas that you can integrate into a warm up. A lot of people really like it. It's not super heady, so it's hard to mess it up. I mean, there's no wrong way of doing it. We're gonna have a product out. I don't know. I thought I'd have it out by September. Now here we are in almost November. It's kind of like Sig 6, really ramped up in that it's gonna be. There's going to be no neural response testing, but what we're going to use as the assessment is that kind of like this moral reflex, where there's this like you kind of put the brakes on, like in balance challenge positions. So we're going to have this product where you put people in these different balance challenges, and when it fails or where it elicits that moral response, then we have different ways to reset it. One would be like a tragus reset, a little part of your ear where you rub that. That's a reset you could use. So we're going to build a product that's going to be the one I'm going to recommend in the future, like in 3 months or 6 months, whenever that comes out. But right now, 6 are free. Just follow us on Instagram. That'd be the best place to learn.
Okay.
Casually at this point.
Yeah, and then Chris, you said it earlier. Obviously, I don't know if Shawn's announced it or anything. I mean, but I guess we're safe to announce it now because we're talking about it. But you're coming down to Birmingham, right?
Yep. Can't wait. Chris invited us down, so
yes.
I think it's that first weekend in December. I feel like
third or fourth, fifth or sixth, somewhere in there. It's that first Saturday, Sunday in. In December.
The first
That's
Saturday,
correct.
Sunday. Yep. So I'm pumped about that. Yep.
Where's that information?
It's not up yet. My intern is probably gonna have it out. Could be 2 days, could be 10 days. But I got a trip coming up to Europe. I said, hey, I'm gonna get the Europe stuff taken care of. But if we can get the links up to Birmingham before I leave, that would be good. And I'm leaving like in 10 days or 11 days.
Now, what level course is this in Birmingham?
We're gonna have level 1 and level 2, and like you had just said earlier, people if they want to just dip their toes, level 1. Again, it's a 1-day live workshop. I'm coming down. If we have enough people, I'll probably bring an assistant or two. You get the 3 online courses, and if that's all someone ever does with us, you can thank me later. But it's awesome. It'll transform how most people are working with their clients, and that the reset or the intervention is so easy. So it's really, I get excited about it is we now have people like they go home the night of day 1, and I just took my wife out of back pain she's had for 3 years. It's crazy. So we had a guy up in Massachusetts a couple weeks ago. He was there, our level 1 and level 2 Saturday, Sunday in Massachusetts. On Tuesday, he sent me a video. One of his coworkers. It looks like he works with a lot of athletes. I think this guy's more of a baseball facility. The guy blew out his tricep. So it was
I saw that. Yeah.
At least a grade 2 tear, and his lat. Yeah, and he couldn't straighten his arm. So he did the level 1, which is just head position and sniffs, along with our steps. And on Tuesday, this guy could straighten his arm. He could actually do it with load, and he could actually throw a ball, and he could fully extend. It was like, okay, that's
nice.
Awesome. So level 1 makes a person pretty freaking dangerous. And then the advantage of level 2 is that's where all the joint actions come in. So what sucks about that is you won't be good at that on Monday. That'll take 5 Mondays or 10 Mondays before you're pretty good at it. But the value in having that neuromechanical map is it really lets you know, like, anatomically, I was just about ready to say geographically, but anatomically where on the body the issue really is from a proprioceptive standpoint. So that can help inform your decisions on how to select triggers that are more customized to the individual. But truth be told, level 1, level 2, they both produce the exact same effect on the body. And so, so people can buy, I think level 1 is, I think it's $749, $750, something like that. And level 2, if you bought them independently, it's $550. And you got to do 1 before you do 2. And I think when you buy them both together, I think it's like $11.50 or something, $11 a quarter, $11.50, something like that. You get like a 10% discount.
Okay,
So,
cool.
Yeah.
All right. So where can people find you, man? I mean, I know you said Instagram. What's your handle and
Yep. So
everything else? Share where people find you.
Yeah, I'd definitely say Instagram, and it's at Square One, the number, not O-N-E, but the numerical 1 system. So Square One System. And then from there, there's links right in my bio to get to our website. And the website sucks because I'm the chief to cook in the bottle washer. So I'm a web developer, a neuro hacker. It's terrible. So if you go there, like, I'm the idiot to put it together. But Instagram's my least embarrassing place to follow us, I would say. But it really, that's where we're most active, and we're trying to share successes and some thoughts and some ideas, and sometimes little nuggets here and here that you could use. But and then that definitely, I'm gonna just leave it at Instagram. Right. Is definitely the best place to interact with us.
All right, cool. And Chris, tell everybody where everybody can find you, because I can never remember.
A lot of underscores. It is fast _and _agile _49. Fast and agile 49. Underscores in between everything.
Cool. Cool. Shawn, dude, this was a lot of fun, bro. We got to do this again. This is really good.
It's so fun talking with guys like you. They're so open-minded, because it was so funny, man. Early in my career, I was like pulling teeth to get people even to have and converse. So I'm grateful for you guys, what you're doing, and this is awesome, man. So I'm so grateful for both of you guys. Thank you.
Cool. Well, I appreciate that, man. You got a great system, and you got a really good thing going on. So I'm hopeful I can make it down there in Birmingham. I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to, but I'm definitely going to try to get down there. If I can't, one way or the other, we definitely got to do this again, and want to follow up and just keep learning a little bit more. And so guys, go follow Shawn, take a look, Chris as well, and you guys know where you can find us. You can find us at Elite Level Performance. We're everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Elite Level Performance. You guys got questions, you can comment on the YouTube post, or mail them into info@elitelevelperformance.com. And that is the show for today. So remember, guys, go share the show, please. Appreciate y'all for watching. Shawn, brother, thanks for coming on. And we will all talk soon.